In this video, we're going to look at the three types of errors that a programmer can make, and we want to learn to identify the different types of errors so that we can address them in the right ways. So we're going to pay attention to compile time versus runtime, and then the three types of errors are syntax errors, runtime errors, which we also call exceptions sometimes, and semantic errors. So let's take a look at each of them in turn. First of all, let's talk about compile time versus runtime. What are we talking about here? Well, we had mentioned in the first video that Java is a compiled language, and so that there was that step of compilation before we actually run a program. And so that's done by Java C. And there are certain errors that happen at compile time. And the way that we know that is that compilers not only translate into machine code, but they also check syntax. Okay, so they're checking to see if a program is grammatically correct. So if we've left off some kind of symbol or made some mistake in our program's grammar, that's going to be caught by the compiler at compile time, and the program will never even have the chance to run at runtime. And so runtime is after compilation, once Java C has successfully translated the code to bytecode, the Java code to bytecode. We run the Java program, which is the virtual machine, which is really an interpreter for bytecode. At that time, we're actually running our program, and anything that might come out as a mistake due to conditions during the program's execution is going to happen at runtime. So we just kind of want to be aware that there are two times here, and this is going to kind of come out over and over again throughout the year as we work, that there are these two layers that affect how our program operates. So let's look at the first type of error, which is a syntax error. A syntax error is simply an error in the grammar of a program. You might be missing a semicolon, or you might misuse a symbol or misspell something. You're not following the pattern of the language correctly, right? So pretty simple to find. That this will be caught at compile time by Java C. Java C will tell you what line it found the syntax error on, and these are usually easy to correct and find. So syntax errors are, generally speaking, kind of the most simple errors that we can make, and you'll make a lot of them. It's natural to make syntax errors. You're typing quickly, you just miss something, and they're not something to worry about. We fix them and we move on. The second type of error that we want to look at is called a runtime error. Again, sometimes we call these runtime exceptions, and these are things that happen, again, of course, during runtime, during when Java is executing your program in bytecode, and typically we think of these as a crash, right? So the program compiled just fine. There was nothing wrong with the grammar, or syntax of the program. However, when we went to run it, some condition came up in the program that wasn't expected, and the program didn't know how to deal with it. So some examples of these are dividing by zero, right? So you might think, I would never divide by zero. I know better than that. Well, you might not intentionally divide by zero, but you might be having a formula in your program that has a division in it, and the denominator has a variable that just happens to cause that denominator to become zero in a way that you didn't expect, right? So we accidentally divide by zero. You could run out of memory by misusing some objects, or maybe you have a file you're addressing that isn't there for some reason, right? So these kinds of things are what we call runtime errors. They're not problems with the grammar of the program, they're problems with things that happen on the ground while it's running. The last type of error is called a semantic error. So a semantic error, again, is not a syntax error. The program compiles just fine. It's also not a runtime error in the sense that the program doesn't crash. The program executes and completes its execution. However, the result that we got from the program was not what we expected or what we intended. So imagine you have a program that sort of has some formula and it calculates, let's say it calculates compound interest for a given amount of principal and an interest rate at a given amount of time, but it does it wrong, right? It just gives you the wrong answer. Well, Java doesn't know that this is wrong. The program compiled, the program ran, it gave an answer. Everything seems good from Java's perspective. However, you know that, wait a minute, this isn't the right answer. I made a mistake in my formula. So this is like a logic error. Semantic means meaning, so this is an error in the meaning of your program. And these can be hard to diagnose sometimes, right? Because these are human kinds of errors that Java is not going to be able to help you out with. And so these are sometimes the most complicated kinds of errors. But these are the three different classes of errors that we have: syntax errors, problem with the program's grammar; runtime errors, problem with the execution of that program that causes it to crash; and then semantic errors, problems with the program's meaning where the result wasn't what we were shooting for. Generally speaking, pretty much all of our errors are going to fall into one of those three categories.